What if you had the opportunity to create a generation of animal lovers? What if you had the opportunity to kind of step back, take a look at all the different ways that we are educating children about animals, all the different ways that we are leveraging our teachers in their classrooms to create a more compassionate world for animals, and take a step back, look at areas of improvement, opportunities for deeper engagement, and actually start to create a strategy, a plan, a toolkit, if you will, to create a more compassionate planet for animals, one student, one classroom, one teacher at a time. These are some of the questions and ideas that we're going to explore today on the Street Dog Podcast, brought to you, of course, by the Street Dog Coalition. We are a national nonprofit providing free veterinary care and related services to pets of people experiencing or at risk of homelessness. I am your host, Daria Tavana, and I'm also the Director of Development at the Street Dog Coalition. And today, I am so excited to welcome Nicole Green. Nicole is the Director of Animalearn. And Nicole leads the charge in promoting humane science education by advocating for alternatives to traditional animal dissection in schools. With her extensive experience in education reform and animal welfare, she has helped shape compassionate learning environments that prioritize both scientific excellence and ethical responsibility. All of these things really resonate with our core values at the Street Dog Coalition of compassionate activism and trust. An unbridled collaboration, because I know Nicole is going to talk about all the different moving parts and pieces that go into the incredible work that she does. So we're really thrilled to have her here today to share her insights on how humane education can positively impact both students and animals alike. Welcome to the podcast, Nicole. Woo!
Yay! So happy to be here. Thank you for that amazing introduction. Wow, I need to take you around with me to all the conferences I go to.
Love it. I am pocket sized. I am short. I fit into small spaces. I can just pop out anytime you need me to.
Love it. Love it.
But there is no off button, so you're probably going to regret that.
No, never. Never.
Nicole, so I know I mentioned this before we hit record, but this is so exciting because at the Street Dog Coalition, especially on this podcast, we have not had many opportunities to really lean into this interesting side of one of our core values of compassionate activism to talk about, the next generation of animal, welfare experts and enthusiasts. And I'm really excited, and I know a lot of our audience members are excited because we also have a lot of animal rights activists surrounding us, people who are advocating for the rights of both animals, of vulnerable people, the intersection of the two. So I'm really excited to chat with you about this topic in particular today. And maybe you can kick things off for us by telling us a little bit about Animalearn and what motivated you personally to focus on humane science education.
Sure. So, this is going to be a long story.
Love it. Love it.
I'll try to keep it brief. So, Animalearn is actually an education division of the American Anti-Vivisection Society, and which is AAVS. So I'm going to abbreviate that because a lot of people are just like, what's vivisection? So we basically, as an organization, we work to help animals who are used in research, testing, and education. And Animalearn just focuses on animals, the use of animals in education. But there's really a prequel to Animalearn, and I kind of wanted to just kind of give a little bit of a history of it. ABS has actually been around since 1883, so it's one of the oldest animal protection organizations out there in the US. And we actually have roots in humane education. So back in the 1920s, there was something called the Kind Club that was initiated by by people there. People were at AVS, and they were doing humane education then. So they would do presentations locally because we're based in the Philadelphia area. So doing presentations and just basically planting seeds of kindness and compassion to local kids in the community. So Animalearn continued that effort. And back in when it got its start in 1990, there was really a time when animal rights had was really taking off in the 1980s and the 1990s. So Animalearn got off the ground when my predecessor, Zoe Weil, who is really a pioneer in the field of humane education right now, and she founded the Institute for Humane Education. But back then, she had my job, and she was the director of Animalearn. And she went out into the community, the Philadelphia local area, did presentations, and it was really more of like a broad. She did a lot of presentations about different animal protection issues. So it wasn't just a focus on how animals are used for dissection or how animals are used in science education. So um, in 1996, we founded our main program, which is the Science Bank. Now, the Science Bank is a program that we facilitate that offers solutions for teachers and students that don't want to dissect in the classroom or don't want to harm animals for educational purposes. Because at that time, there were a lot of calls coming in from students or concerned parents, and they needed some sort of alternative for their classrooms. So we were able to create that kind of a program, which is still in existence today. But at the time when we started it out, it was a very modest program. So we had maybe 50 to 100 different types of alternatives. Today, there are hundreds of different alternatives that are available for teachers and students to be able to tap into. So yeah, we that has been our main goal, is really just creating awareness about the different alternatives that are out there through the Animalearn program.
Oh, that is so, so, so cool. I
But you know what? I didn't finish telling you how I got involved.
Oh yeah, tell me, yeah, where do you come into play?
So
Where do
I
you
come
come into
into
play?
play. It's funny because as a college student, I really kind of immersed myself in that was when I really became fascinated and enlightened, I'll say, about different animal protection issues. So I went to different fur protests. I just kind of did a lot of different papers and things in my college program about different animal issues. And I also volunteered at a local animal shelter. So I really just became heavily involved in animal protection. And then after college, I got involved with a local New Jersey animal rights group, and I was the coordinator for that. And then also had my own radio show. So similar to a podcast today, it
Yes.
was called Speak Out for Animals. So yeah, back in the late 90s, that was kind of my thing. And that's what I was doing. I was talking to different people from different groups, similar to what you're doing. And, kind of got engaged that way. But I really wanted a job that I could use my passion for animal protection. And I found that through uh, AVS and Animalearn, and I started, yeah, a long time ago.
Oh my God. This is,
But one of the people I interviewed was the then director of outreach. He was one of the guests on my show, so I think that was sort of like my foot in the door. They kind of knew me, so he was able to put in a good word for me, and
oh
that's
my
how I
gosh.
started here. Yeah.
This is so cool. We have a word for you. The kids have a word for you. And that word is simply, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's simply mother. Mother,
Oh, okay.
mother, in that you have done so many incredible things that me and my colleagues do right now. I know I told you this before we started the call, but you clearly were a bit ahead of your time here. So first and foremost, I want to acknowledge that you are a mother. I hope if you're not familiar with that term, please ask
I
your
love it.
coworkers. Great,
Yeah.
great. They will be like, wow, that is the ultimate compliment. But
Wow,
in all
thank you.
seriousness, Nicole, it is so cool to hear how you went from someone who had an appreciation for and had empathy toward animals to being activated in your college years, using your voice for, animals. And I'm sure at that time also in one way or another, people who or who are affected by animal industries, kind of using your voice and your platform to create a more compassionate world for them. So it is, I'm laughing at me calling you mother, but it is amazing to be in the presence of someone who, has really just blazed the trail for me, for my colleagues, for so many of your other peers. So your story is really cool, and I know it's inspiring for a lot of people who are doing,
Awesome.
yeah, similar work to me, similar work to our other guests. And can you maybe share with us a little bit exactly, now that we know a little bit about what Animalearn does, can you maybe tell us how Animalearn does it? How do you
hmm
actually work with schools and educators to promote these alternatives to animal dissection? I'm sure you get a lot of, well, we've always done it this way, so.
We do get that. And actually, so since we're a very small team in Animalearn, there's only two of us in the department. So we're basically trying to do our best to do outreach to the science educators. So we go to the National Science Teachers Conference, we go to National Biology Teacher Conference, which we kind of just came back from a couple weeks ago. And then we also, we basically try to expose teachers by exhibiting at these different events, exposing them to the different innovative materials that have been developed. So it could be augmented reality, virtual dissections, to hands-on type models. In fact, recently there was a model that was just developed called the kind frog, and I have him here. So I know some people can't see if you're not on Facebook, but this is called the kind frog, and he was developed um, by Teach Kind, and it's a fully dissectable frog. So what's amazing about this particular frog is that it's only $5 to purchase it. And that's comparable to the cost of actual frog specimens that are available to teachers. So it's exciting because we were at this biology teacher conference recently and we're able to see how excited teachers were about dissecting the kind frog. And I think this is going to be a game changer, especially for frogs dissection. So it's
Yeah.
exciting to see that. It's exciting to see the light bulbs go off for teachers, and especially when they're skeptical. Like you said, a lot of teachers are out there and they think nothing really can substitute traditional animal dissections. But there are a lot of other teachers that get it and see the value in the humane alternatives that are being developed, and they're more and more being developed every year. So
That's
it's
awesome.
exciting.
It is really exciting.
Mhm.
It's so hard for me to not fully chime in here with my personal
Yeah, I
opinion
want to hear your dissection story.
and my outrage. But my dissection story. Actually, I love how you say that as
I
if
have one too, believe
everyone
me.
must have a dissection story,
It
right?
seems like even the science teachers like to share their dissection stories too.
I think we dissected, oh God, like a pigeon, if I recall correctly,
Yep.
in high school. And I remember being totally freaked out and grossed out and not wanting to participate. I don't recall what my level of participation was.
hmm
I was more of an English theater girly, so I have to imagine since it was science related, my level of participation was very low.
Yeah.
Um, but but I distinctly remember being kind of outraged and like disgusted. I don't think I made the connection between the fact that I was dissecting an animal that was living and breathing and was bred to die, essentially. I wish I
Yeah.
would have realized that. I probably would have created quite a fuss in my high school. But
Yeah.
so tell me, what was your dissection story?
Well, I actually have a couple different stories. Really, when I was doing dissections, I think it was in middle school, I had a lab partner. I remember the frog, she did the dissection of the frog. But then there was all different types of dissection. So there was a crayfish. And what I really remember about the crayfish dissection was that you had to take the crayfish apart and then tape or glue it back together on a piece of kind of cardboard paper, and as it is, as it looks in his own, to replicate how it actually is on the animal. So the crayfish, the eyes at the top, put sort of piece it together as a puzzle on this piece of paper. So take it apart, put it back together and glue it back. And it was really just disturbing
Yeah.
to me to
And
do something like that and to
and I'm
feel like,
curious.
yeah, like that was his life. That.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm curious to know how when you are so let's kind of back this up a little bit. So here at the Street Dog Coalition, a lot of what we aim to do is share stories of the people who are impacted by the work that we do. Stories of like protecting the health and safety and happiness of the animals that we care for. And I'm curious to know, we have a lot of partner organizations where, their clientele, or rather their mission, their objective, their vision as a nonprofit is not as easily communicated as ours, where we can just show you a picture of this incredibly happy person with their pet. And my question here for you is, and this is mostly coming from maybe some of our other partner organizations who are listening, who maybe do like B2B work, business to business work, and have a harder time getting their message of compassionate activism out there. What kind of advice, or what has worked for you in the past in terms of like sharing success stories that are, rooted in compassionate activism? And is there a success story in particular that comes to mind?
Yeah, I mean, so there are many different layers to this issue, as you can imagine. So one of the things that we work on is also working to help pass statewide student choice policies or just
Oh,
dissection
cool.
choice policies, laws and policies, statewide policies. And when I was at the Taking Action for Animals conference, one of the presentations I saw there was a senator in Maryland, Senator Ben Kramer, who I actually had met at another conference, but he inspired me to we had been working on trying to establish a Maryland statewide dissection choice policy. And basically, what those do is they give students the right to opt out of dissection if they're in a certain state. Um, New Jersey does have a policy, Pennsylvania has a policy, and Animalearn was actually instrumental in helping to pass both of those policies. So we had tried to pass a policy back before 2020, and they were unsuccessful because we didn't get the support from the Department of Education. So, because fast forward to a couple years ago, we got a call from a parent who was very upset. Her daughter was being forced to do a dissection, and she was in Maryland, in Prince George's County. And fortunately, they actually were one of the one counties in Maryland that did offer a policy for students to be able to opt out. Sadly, that teacher wasn't aware of it, but we gave the parent and the daughter the copy of the policy, and they presented it to the teacher. And fortunately, she was given an alternative. So, but that being said, since there are only a handful of counties in Maryland that do have a policy, we continued to want to do a statewide policy because there are 23 counties in Maryland, and that's 1,400 schools that, could be tapping into an alternative if they wanted that and not have to face that kind of a situation. So I had started talking. I actually reached out to Senator Kramer. I reached out to the former sponsor of the bill in the past, and we were talking about it and talking about what steps we could make. So, one of the things that came up was having the support of the Maryland Department of Education. So I reached out to them, and would you believe it? But this was just a few months ago. They're actually in the process of updating their science safety manual, which is for the entire, Department of Education and goes out to all of the public school districts. So that hadn't been updated since 1999. Okay.
Whoa. That's both
So
shocking and completely not shocking at
I
all.
know. So anyway, it turns out that they said that they were going to be incorporating language that would give students the opportunity to opt out of the dissections. So the contact from the Department of Education sent me the information, the quote that they were going to put in there, and I didn't think it was strong enough. And I talked about it with the legislators, and they suggested going back with stronger language. And long story short, they were more receptive to it, and they actually included the changed verbiage that I suggested. And they now have this new science safety manual, which includes that they're going to be offering alternatives to students that are looking to opt out of dissection. So for me, and that was a huge win after many years of trying to advocate for dissection choice in the state. Now it only affects public school students, but I think that really sets a precedent for, even if there are private schools, they can look to the public policy and see that this is what's happening in a larger scale. So now there are 22 states now that offer dissection choice policies, and as well as Washington, D.C. So that's
Oh my
exciting. And
God.
that's basically just for K to 12 students.
This
So
is
in case
this is
anybody's listening.
this is amazing. And clearly, because of these efforts, ultimately, my personal dream is is for the demand for these frogs, these pigeons, these sometimes cats. I've heard horror
Yes.
stories of cats.
Hmm.
The demand for these animals will go down and maybe eventually go away, and then these animals will no longer be bred to die for experimentation. But, on the other end of the spectrum is the child who is learning, who is now maybe having more exposure to more, compassionate forms of learning, sometimes even more like immersive and accurate and interesting
Hmm.
different tools in the classroom. And in your personal opinion, I imagine it might be hard to get like hard facts, but do you think that if a child in, an education environment over the course of their entire time being educated, if they're not exposed to like the commodification of animals in this way, do you think that that makes them uh, maybe more compassionate pet guardians? Does it make them more compassionate people like in general? I realize that I'm really hopping over a lot here. But I guess my question is, what is the implication of
Hmm.
this kind of cultivating this kind of compassion on an education level for the future of maybe animal guardians, veterinarians, roles like
Hmm.
that. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think you're obviously, if students are not subjected to that, that's a really good thing because a lot of times when dissections are present, there's going to be a certain percentage of students that are going to be squeamish or want to opt out of dissections because, like you said, they have companion animals at home,
Mm,
because they really care about animals, like I did as a child, like you probably did as a child. Um, so, I think it's going to encourage more students, especially females, to maybe venture into a field of science, right? Because they're not going to have to be subjected to that, like you said, the commodification of animals, because students can learn in the veterinary field, in the medical field, without harming animals. Veterinarians, obviously, vet students have to use animals in some way, but they can do that through shelter medicine programs, through
Yeah.
spay neuter programs, through amazing new synthetic models that tons of vet schools are actually incorporating now into their training. So, I think the sky's the limit, and I think it really instills that ethic of compassion and learning.
I love this idea of also, you're totally right. By removing this kind of like squeamish element to this science experience, you are, I think, in a way, allowing the people who maybe are a little more naturally compassionate toward animals because they have a companion animal at home to participate. And I think when they
Yes.
participate, of course, they are more likely to find joy in that participation. Find a level of satisfaction in that in gaining that knowledge with
Mhm.
which, as you said so well, could really usher in this next generation of like tender-hearted veterinarians,
Yes.
veterinarians who are at the forefront of science education. Um,
Yes. I just wanted to make a point. So yeah, I
yeah.
mean, it's facilitating like an inclusive environment, I think, because a lot of
Yes.
times, I mean, like myself, when I was a child, you're scared to speak up. You're scared to speak out and say something about doing dissections because you may have a large uh, number in your class that are, oh yeah, I want to do this because they have that morbid curiosity about dissecting. And it's just really, I think, facilitates that. And I think it's exciting when you come across teachers that really want to instill that value of appreciation for life and looking at animals in their natural habitats and
Yes.
observations. I mean, and doing things like real scientists are doing, you know?
Yes.
So,
I really appreciate that. And I really appreciate
mhm.
this idea of like emulating what real scientists are doing.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
because there is an element of like pseudoscience to some of these dissections, of course, to like experimenting on animals. Ooh, God, that's a different podcast episode for a different day. But this is all just so exciting, really helpful. I know a lot of our listeners who are science teachers, who know science teachers, who have been scarred by dissection in the classroom. Um, I think they're finding a lot of hope in this conversation. And I'm sure that a lot of parents who are listening, who have kids who have maybe tried to abstain from this kind of activity are feeling a little bit more informed and empowered. And I want to let our audience know before I let you go, Nicole, that I've included a link to Animalearn's website in the show notes. Very awesome. It's a fantastic website, and I'm curious to Nicole if our audience members go to your website, how do you think they can engage most effectively on your website? Is it through donations? Are there toolkits? What can they expect when they land there?
So I think the best website to go to right now is thesciencebank.org.
Okay.
And that is our loan program. That's how you can access all of the information on our loan program. We loan out something for all of the commonly dissected animals, from cats to sharks to earthworms to you name it, we have it. And now and we have models, we have technology, we have VR experiences that you can, tools that you can use to be able to access those types of technology. And we also have an online dissection resource list as well. So if you click on the website, just search around there and you'll see our online dissection resources. You can check out all of the things we have available for that. We have animal resources as well as human anatomy resources that you can access. So, I mean, really, dissection is all about learning about your own anatomy
Yeah.
in most cases, right? So we've encountered several teachers that do lots of really fun things where, students can test their own bodies, test their heart rates and things like that. So there are a lot of different fun activities that you can do that I think is a lot more engaging when you're using um, different apps and different other types of anatomy virtual resources. So definitely check out some of the things we have there.
That's fantastic. That's
Yep,
fantastic. And you said that's at the sciencebank.org.
correct. Yes.
Cool, cool, cool. This is fantastic. I know that I've talked a little bit about our mission as well throughout this episode, Nicole. Obviously, what we do is protect the human animal bond between pets and people who are often overlooked. And I just think it's so interesting to shine a light on what you're doing. You, in your own special way, are changing and evolving the relationship that students have with animals in a scientific setting, which is really amazing. And then, of course, ultimately, I'm sure that the goal is for these animals to no longer be bred for this purpose, and
Yep.
ultimately, sparing them from a life of suffering. So I think it's just really fascinating to see how our missions overlap and how they
They
go in
do.
opposite directions. But it,
Yep.
it's all about that relationship that we as people have to animals, and all about finding opportunities for us as people to release animals from suffering, to create a generation of animal lovers and veterinarians who are invested in, real, safe science. I love this idea of using apps to engage kids and young veterinarians to be. We all know the kids love the apps. So yeah, this is just amazing. I know that you've really planted a seed in the hearts and minds of so many of our listeners. And I
Oh,
know,
good.
yeah, and I know a lot of veterinarians sometimes feel I am not a veterinarian. I do not speak on behalf of the veterinary community, but I have interviewed many of them. And I know sometimes they also feel a little bit hesitant to speak out against some of these maybe more outdated and seemingly cruel practices. So I want to let those veterinarians know that they are not alone. There are organizations like Animalearn doing incredible work, ushering in a beautiful next generation of like tender-hearted veterinarians, I think is the only way to put it.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know.
one more thing I wanted to kind of
Yeah.
show,
Yes.
speaking of tender-hearted young veterinarians,
Who's that?
this is CPR, our CPR junior, and you can actually borrow. This is one of the things you can borrow from the science bank. So sometimes we loan out to different summer camps or vet camps. Kids that really love animals and want to be vets someday, they can train to do pet first aid with the CPR junior
Oh
and
my
learn
God.
mouth to snout resuscitation.
Mouth to
This is
snout.
mouth to snout. And yeah, and he's awesome. So it's really all about providing resources for those kids that really love animals, those teachers that love animals, that want to incorporate humane resources into their classrooms. Because, this is our future, as you said, this is the next generation. So we want to really create those compassionate, kind uh, kids out there to be compassionate, kind adults, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's
So,
that's the mic drop moment. That's the mic drop line right there.
yeah.
Nicole, that dog is awesome. Thank you for sharing.
Sure.
And I want to thank you so much, Nicole, for providing us with your insight on today's episode, for giving us a different perspective, as to kind of what the evolutions are in the, veterinary science world, the humane education world. It's not something that we often get a peek into. So I want to encourage our supporters, please check out Animalearn's website. I'm also going to include a link to the sciencebank.org in the show notes. So check out
Thank you.
those resources. Yeah, thank you, Nicole. Nicole, I think we had a little bit too much fun on today's
I
podcast.
mean, we could keep going. I could
We
keep going for
right?
another hour.
We can keep going. No, but in all honesty, Nicole, thank you, thank you, thank you for taking the time to chat with me today. I'm really excited to share this message with our audience, and please don't hesitate to let us know what initiatives you have coming up in the future. We'll bring you back on the podcast, but in the
Okay.
meantime, yeah, thank you, Nicole. Thank you, and thank you so
Okay.
much to our supporters for tuning in. Until next time, Nicole.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Daria.
you. Take care.
Yay.
Have a happy
Huh.
holiday.
Happy holidays to you and your listeners.
Adios.
Bye-bye.